County Commissioners, whereupon the commissioners can take it or leave it or do whatever they want. Dan McMahon has regretfully not been able to be here this morning. He is the one who has written the resolution. My understanding is that his fee, should we decide to do this, will be paid by New Terra and the Development Committee. So that is taken care of. It would be a donation to the public trust, and then we would have that designated, and he would be our attorney. So we have that. There are two new two boards now for that enterprise, and the newly formed one is the Trinity Regional Operation Board. Yes.
The hospital operations.
Hospital Operations Board. That will be made up totally of surgeons and doctors, primarily surgeons. There are 105 investors, of which probably 80 or so are doctors, and there are a lot of very high dollar surgeons that have signed on to this. The latest one being the new chairman of that operations. That would be Dr. Eric Friedman, who is a neurosurgeon. And our erstwhile former CEO of the Logan County Hospital apparently is quite ticked off. So,
are they still planning on putting in roads inside of this addition with the tax money?
They intend to put roads inside there. This resolution also considers that. The definitive portions of that is up to whatever we decide. They're asking for a grand total of $12 million. I've already told them that's the moon. And from day one, I said that's the moon.
Has anyone talked to Logan County Rural Water about this project?
Yes, and there's a real possibility that they can get an economic development assistance to put in the entire sewer and water service, and then charge the recipients of that enough that they can repay the loan from the Department of Commerce. And that only has been recently discussed with them, but it is definitely an avenue that would reduce the cost to the county.
Has anyone done the study of the industrial access grant for the roads? Or for the roads, the county road?
On Waterloo you're talking about, and there's been apparently some rhetoric with ODOT. I have not talked to Mitch Surratt myself. There isn't very much in the way of funding for industrial access and lake access grants that are part and parcel. You know, in talking to Wilson Lyle here not too long ago, he was shocked and surprised that a lake access grant was given, and apparently several others were as well. But it is problematic.
Well, I tell you, I have some issues with it. Some of my issues are, I think this is too much private mixed with government. If it was 100% into the, hey, we want to do this and we want to do it for the public use only, like the roads in there, hey, I might have a different opinion. But the way this is that I've seen your project, I don't think I can support it at this, the way it's written in the presentation that you've given me. You also got to take into consideration, when we got government out of the medical business here already, it was a heck of a fight. On top of that, these folks signed an agreement out here, and they can pull their other hospital that we know is here as soon as they lose critical access. And they may or may not lose it, but that is a chance you take. if you build another hospital. Now, if someone private builds it, you can't stop it. But if you're not gonna help Mercy with what they have, then why would you help anybody else build the same thing? That may hurt your own citizens that's already getting access.
And I agree, I mean, I don't think we can take what I call tax money and build private roads inside of someone else's private property.
And I agree with that
I
as
can't
well.
support it.
And from the very first time we sat down, I told them, we are not going to get off of the current easement. Any kind of infrastructure must be in the current easement. We're not going to go on their land. Now, if we did support it for just on the easement, for whatever kind of development that is going to be there, and I think that sewer and water is one of those things that local government has, what, I wouldn't say obligation, but possibly, you know, this is what's prevented all the development down there in that particular area. It needs something like that. Now, whether we can get real water to do it, you know,
Well,
is
I
an
think
item.
rural water would have been my first stop if I was
Absolutely.
a developer. I'd have went to
Absolutely.
rural water, done a CDBG grant, go
Right.
from there.
But you
But I'm
do
all about-
understand that they've had a change of management now, and
I don't have a
so,
problem with the infrastructure, I have a problem with the projects inside of the private 147 acres.
as well as Mark, as well as everybody who's got, you know, I agree with that, I do. But I am also looking at having a review committee to go through that with that mandate, if that's what we choose, because I guarantee you, if they recommend on supplying enough funds for all that infrastructure, you're gonna see a no vote here. You know, I do believe that a review committee could check all this out and find out exactly what we have and what we don't have, and then make recommendations according to what they discover. So I'm kind of like, I'd like to look, in other words, and that's what a review
So
is.
you would support the review
I
committee?
would support the review committee. I don't know that I would support the recommendations that they chose to put infrastructure on that 147 acres. But I do believe that this will be a boon to all the businesses in there. Guthrie Schools has talked about putting in a school there on that school land up there 3 miles north. And to have a lagoon, assuming that we can get a lagoon there, would be money in their pocket from the standpoint, you know, they have to have a school down south. Currently, they're planning on also a lagoon to do that school,
Yeah, I
but if
mean-
there's one already there.
I've been told secondhand that Edmond Schools does not support this as well.
Well, and that, from what I understand, is because it's a 25-year TIF.
Why would we want to form a review committee just to come back to this board with a very similar plan and delay them from actually updating their plan to something that is more public-only use?
Well, I mean, that's the decision of the board, but, you know, it'd be nice to get this thing going and at least a review committee.
But you can't support it the way it is.
No, not,
So is it the review committee's job to change their scope of their plan?
I think so,
Really?
don't you?
No, I think the review committee is only to look out for the taxing entities affected,
Right,
not to help them build or help them design their development.
correct.
So I think they need to go back and redesign that will fit more into what this board has said is proper function of government. And I'm hearing, you don't think this is, I don't believe this is, and I'm hearing from you, you don't think it is the way it's written.
Right.
Can I answer that question?
Sure.
The purpose of the review committee is for us to sit down with them and go through the specifics of the plan in detail and go through these details with the rural water district and what grants are available and not, and what we can get from the other various agencies and come up with a plan that we can all live with. And we intend to adjust the plan and modify it as we go through the process, so that when we end up with it, that we come up, because we're not gonna come back to you with a plan that you're not gonna support. And
Right.
that's what I think the purpose of the review committee is, how we can look at this and how it can be structured to where everyone's happy with it.
I definitely won't support anything where we're spending tax dollars. Once you write that check to the county, it's tax dollars inside of private property. It's gonna
Doesn't matter if that property generates those taxes or not.
I think it's a great project. I hope it goes through, but I just don't think it ought to go through on the taxpayers' back.
Are you familiar with the TIF that went on in Norman? Or have you driven I-35 South lately and seen the, what hotel is that, Charlie?
Have you been to the embassy suite there where the ACO meeting is?
Embassy Suites and all that
That's what we're
development
talking about.
to the
What he's
west
talking
of there
about there.
and north and south, it's actually north of the airport. All that was done, and Monty, I am not one to go say, hey, let's go spend public money on private projects. I'm out on that deal too. But this deal was designed, from what I've read, is designed to do a project like this, and that has been a very, very, very successful project for, was that Canadian County?
No, yeah.
Cleveland.
Cleveland County. Cleveland County.
Cleveland
Norman.
County. I would
That was a Norman
suggest-
project,
Norman
not a
project.
Cleveland County
I'd suggest calling those commissioners down there and saying, how were you able to build private infrastructure or public infrastructure on private roads? And they'll tell you it's been very, very successful.
I think that was the city of Norman.
That was the city of Norman, and it was a sales tax, and it was, I believe, a 25-year TIF. However, it's been so successful that they'll be paying that off at the end of this year.
Yeah, that's fast.
Well, I say it the way, like, if I just come to you and say, hey, I ain't gonna pay my property taxes, I'm gonna start making roads and ponds on my private property. And then when I get done, we're gonna start selling off lots, and then you're gonna get all this tax money. I mean, it's not to improve my property, it's
Well,
to do.
Let me give you a good example of what you're talking about, okay? Is that if we're gonna do this for this development, then why are we doing it for other developments? And right now, the Napa store, which is in the Oklahoma County side of Waterloo, has bought 5 acres on the Logan County side of Waterloo, and they're getting ready to put a little drive in there, concrete drive. They'll have 3 businesses, and one of them being the Napa. And so now, why don't we form a little tip right there? They're gonna be bringing in tax money, property tax, sales tax, and all that. So why doesn't the county go ahead and make a TIF district right there, and then whatever revenue they acquire will pay for their road so that they can make a lot of money in there. It'll be public access. So, you know, if we're gonna do it there, then we need to do it there, we need to do it there, there, and now we're on that slippery slope that we don't wanna go down. So as a consequence, what I'm saying is that though it needs to be indicated that, yes, this is some of the infrastructure that they are going to be building, then yes, that needs to be in this. I'll give you another example. We're already said we would support a TIF district for the I-35-33 interchange. So we have a pipe that's going to go through there that's going to feed everybody. And Love's
100% on public. Right.
100% on public right of way. I'm with you. We're there, okay? They are putting in $900,000 worth of infrastructure on our easement. We are going to reimburse them $150,000 for that infrastructure upgrade. In this case, they're asking for $12 million, but it's all of that in there. Well, that may be that we ought to recognize that and such as that. But what I'm saying is that we're really only going to do this portion, and we'll figure out the cost of it, and maybe we'll pay for all of it, maybe we won't, whatever. But as with their loan, we are gonna pay them for whatever our piece of that will be, and pay them back basically for that infrastructure they put in, and then they'll be able to use that money however they want to do it. If they want to build more roads inside there, they can do that. If they want to, all we're doing is reimbursing them on that loan. We're not paying for anything on their property, but we are paying them back on their loan. So once the loan is paid, they can, that money, they can do with it what they want to.
You can go back to the agreement that we did with Mercy, that, hey, you can leave if you're not critical access. If they already have a facility right down there in Edmond, it wouldn't take a whole lot of losing money to say, I don't want to be here anymore.
Well, that's true.
And then all you're banked upon now, that to service the whole county, that may or may not fly.
And that may be, and we have Josh here that can speak up for Mercy. But what I'm looking at is that facility is 12 miles from this one. It's on the other side of Guthrie. It's
I think it's how federal law is written, the federal guidelines on who's critical access. I believe it's federal. It could be
so in
state.
Oklahoma County.
Not all of them are critical access. Yes, sir?
Can I speak to that? And I had the privilege to serve at your pleasure, or sometimes perhaps displeasure, on the trustees of the Logan Medical Center before it was sold to Mercy. And critical access status is very important, and it's designed for small rural hospitals to try to keep them open. And what's important about it is there's a higher reimbursement rate, Medicare reimbursement rate for critical access hospitals. We were about to lose that because it was determined we were too close to Oklahoma City. So we went to the state legislature and got legislation passed to make an exception. If we were the only hospital in a county, we could continue with that critical access designation. Once another hospital is built, Logan Mercy will lose that designation. When we sold the hospital to Mercy, they wanted it contractually that if they lost critical access, they could close the hospital. And that was very important to them because without that little higher reimbursement rate, I don't even know if it's operating profitably now. I very seriously doubt it is. But without that, they operate in either greater red or greater problem. So I think it's personally unconscionable that we would use property tax dollars to subsidize one hospital that would likely close the hospital in Guthrie.
I agree with you.
That's a new take.
I would definitely support this if it was for the infrastructure only, but nothing on private property, just can't do it.
Could I say one other thing?
Yes.
I believe in private property rights. I believe in the free market. If they come in here totally on their own nickel and establish another hospital and that causes the closure of Guthrie, so be it. I believe in that. But again, it's unconscionable, in my opinion, to subsidize this project with tax dollars and run the risk of putting the Logan Mercy Center out of business.
This county is presently medically underserved, it's classified as that. South of Logan County is supposed to grow by 20,000 people in the next 10 years. And to think that there will never be another medical facility built in Logan County that will not affect the existing hospital, I don't think it's reasonable. You're gonna have too much demand here, you're gonna have too much population growth, and the market's gonna go where the people are. So to think that another facility won't ever get built here, I think is unreasonable to assume.
Yeah,
Population's growing by leaps and bounds in Logan County.
And if you're underserved today, you're gonna be much more underserved tomorrow, which means demand's gonna be higher, and you're gonna get a facility somewhere someday.
But it ain't gonna be tax dollars funded.
So the way this is right now, guys, I don't want to support it, so if you want to make a motion, make it. If not, then let's move on to item 5.
Well, the intent is to get into the details and modify it in such a way that hopefully you can support it.
We're so far out from where I could support it. I mean, I think you're better off in line with what we feel is the proper function of government. And I hate that because I know we have a bunch of local folks that are on the hook for a terrible amount of money and been struggling along for years. And so I hate that. But at the same time, we entered into agreement with Mercy, which would basically be putting a knife in their back. And the people, as a rule, they don't want to take their money and put 100%, 80% on someone's private property. That's basically where I'm at. I mean, if you were 4-laning the roads all the way around and putting your sewer system in, I might think totally different about it for everyone to use. And I know you were gonna dedicate it, but the rest of that stuff in there is yours.
Well, it won't be ours, so we're gonna sell it off, hopefully to the
Well,
local developers.
Somebody,
It will
it's
be-
private, it's gonna be private property.
Well, but everything up around around Oklahoma Street's private property too, but it's served by a public street, and that's what we're gonna end up with. We were just building a mini city of which are gonna be, privately owned parcels, but just like the stores along Oklahoma Street. And the public is gonna use the street, they're gonna go see those businesses, and it'll be public
A little
function.
different than city and county.
Well, I mean, but public is public, I mean,
Well, I agree, it's gonna be a public road, but it's not a county road.
what we would typically do is we would dedicate that road to the county. It
Right,
needs
so
to be a
so
county
then
road.
we gotta pick up the maintenance on it as well. We can't maintain what we got. I got 600 miles, I get $25,000 a month to maintain 600 miles, I can't do it.
Well, we'll do a maintenance agreement on the road to maintain the road, but we will also generate some additional tax revenue to the county where you can start to maintain the road.
But what's the difference of taking your road or taking any housing addition that someone down here is building? I mean,
Because we're gonna generate 100 times more tax revenue than they will.
Yeah, I mean, because we're gonna build your roads and everything else, and I can't
But
support.
the principle's the same, just
Property.
like I was talking about the new Napa going across the road, the principle's the same, the logistics is the same, et cetera, et cetera.
Except for the fact that residential community is different than a commercial development with hundreds of millions of dollars with commercial infrastructure. That's how you're going to increase your tax base and get additional revenue. You have to have dense commercial development where the valuations are very high to generate a lot of tax money without building miles and miles of infrastructure. And if someone asks in a public meeting, why don't you just develop it as houses? Well, you can. But with all the infrastructure that has to go in and the little bit of tax revenue generates, the county's not gonna make any money in the long run. And in this, you're gonna have millions of dollars put in your pocket.
But see, we're not really here to make money. We're here to spend money.
But you, right, and you don't have more money to spend. You won't be able to maintain your roads and provide other services and do some things, other things
Yeah,
that you want to do.
I think this may be an answer for Commissioner Piercy's. We can't take care of what we got now. This is the shot in the arm that Logan County has been looking for a long time. And I think what John's asking for is get it to committee, let's modify the deal, let's work for happy ground where everybody can support it. He's not gonna come in here with a 3-0 vote or we want to get to the point where it's a good deal for everybody. I'm a business owner, Logan County spent millions of dollars here, reinvested millions of dollars here, and I think if we pass on this opportunity, we're gonna sit here without a tax base, and we're gonna be in the same catch-22 we're in now, not being able to take care of our roads, in a catch-22 situation because we can't get any money, and can't get any money because we can't take care of our roads. That's where we are.
Well, why don't we, since it's in Commissioner Piercy's district, why Pearson, I'm sorry. Forgot that y'all cousins.
Pearson.
And he could get with the Edmond superintendent, you can get with the Oak Cliff, you can get with all the taxing entities and without a formal review committee, and see if we can even get close to what this board feels is more of a private, public.
Sure. Yeah.
If it was all about infrastructure on the right of ways, I'd be for it.
Because I'm telling you, I think Edmond's gonna vote no in your review.
Well, that's quite possible.
I don't know about
Quite
that.
possible. And I don't know what Oklahoma County wants to do on their side. There's a lot of development that they still need to do on their side.
Who's all in it? Edmond School, health department?
thing that was listed.
One of those tags, I don't know, it's Francis
Francis
Tuttle.
Tuttle.
Francis Tuttle.
Oak Cliff.
In
Oh,
Ohio
well,
District.
They won't have it, they can't be in it, can they?
Well, I think
On
there's
this
some
review.
question that Dan McMahon addressed, earlier. They receive an ad valorem, but they're on a dead set, and while from the way I understood that Dan said, they're not gonna be a participant, but they are, because their district does go into that, but they're not considered a taxing entity as far as the review committee goes, because they receive a special assessment ad valorem, not taxing entity ad valorem.
So I would have, if this review committee, apparently there'll be 3 taxing entities, but I will have 7 candidates for their consideration for 3 at-large citizens. And my intent would be to ask Oak Cliff on there, since they're not one of the participants, the way I understand it. I would want them on there. Charlie here is not on any of our boards, and I would probably ask him, in fact, I would ask him if he'd want to be one of those 7 to be considered, and we know what his views are.
He has no time.
He is busy traveling all over the cotton picking state, finding all these wonderful places that just, awesome. Any case,
Commissioner, can I make a correction for you?
okay?
You have 4 taxing entities. You have
that
the
would-
county, the health department, Edmond Schools, and Francis Tuttle VOTAC.
Okay,
You
yeah,
would say
I forgot about me.
And the Title 19 is not considered that.
From what Dan explained, they're a special assessment district, so that kind of puts them, even though they get their ad valorem, it puts them in a different, we can verify that with you.
But I would still want them to be one of those that I would present out of the 7 to that, and I would want Charlie to be on there, whether he would be one of those selected or not, I don't know. That would be up to that board.
Well, I'd rather just shoot you straight. I'd rather you get your ducks in a row and then come get closer to what this board may or may not be able to live with, rather than so far out and then try to have this review committee bring it back in. If you know where you're going, you guys can do that. That's the business you're in. That's not the business he's in, or Edmond Schools, or.
Well, but until we have their participation and everyone's feedback, it's tough for us just to come up with a new plan and then present it and then have them come back and change it again. But I think that's the
Reason
venue
why
for the
review
review
committee.
committee, is we have everyone together and,
They can informally do that.
Yeah, I think so.
and we can have everyone together, we can get the input from the at-large members, and then we can revise our plan and modify it through the process, and then when we're done, hopefully have a product everyone.
So what you're saying, even though we wouldn't have a resolution, we could go ahead and form
I don't know about.
a pseudo committee that would be able to review this
I'm
and
saying
come back with
he's
you.
the developer, he can get a hold of all the taxing entities, say, we want you guys to come and participate in some meetings, and let's lay it out to them and see what they say. Because they already know, and I'm telling you, they're not there.
Well, it's the same process as the review committee. We'd like to get into the official process, and like I said, we will change the plan, modify it, whatever. We want everyone's support. Like I said, we're here to work with everybody. We're not here to work against anybody.
And hey, maybe you can partner with Mercy, I don't know, but that's something you guys have to explore, that's not our side of it, right? So are you gonna make a motion? Because I'm not gonna second it. You gonna make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion. Done.
Okay.
Now, if you guys put it back together,
Okay, appreciate it.
well, sorry. Sorry, John.
I think we've made a huge mistake, but.
Well, you can still put something together, it's just,
Appreciate everybody's time. Thanks very much.
Yeah, well, now Cambridge is gonna come and get it probably.
item 5 is consideration of possible action on the appointment of county commissioner, I guess we can.
5.
Item 6, consideration possible action on awarding bid 2014 Fire Department one for one or more custom wildland fire first attack fire apparatus table 930.
You're up, Greg.
Well, and Guthrie, they were both in this.
Figured it out?
Yep.
Oh, you just handed it to me. I don't need to sign this yet.
No.
I'm good.
You told me to make
Wanna read it?
letters.
That's the letter as to why you didn't
Blanche
answer those
But
bids.
they selected the higher bid because they currently own and operate 3 of their trucks, and they chose this because they will continue to provide common functionality in operation of their other vehicles. The high quality of workmanship from the company Blanchett will help eliminate future spending and help save money for the taxpayers. Blanchett also provides a very high level of rollover protection and firefighter protection when fighting fire outside the cab. So it goes with the fleet you have.
Very much.
For the one. Guthrie's on this bid as well.
Our recommendation is to go with the low bid for our truck with the options, which is Blanchett. Cooper Creek's was higher when you added in the options to fit our truck.
Okay. So you're gonna go with Blanchett, because with the options, they are the low bid?
Yes.
Is that
Well, we
correct?
have to have, that options are full to fit our truck,
Right.
yeah.
And so
when you-
Blanchett with the options, I'm just trying
is low-
to,
Is the low bid.
with
Yes.
options, low bid. Commissioners, if I understand correctly, Crescent Fire Department has asked you to award, take the higher but best bid in favor of Blanchett. They've given you written on that. And Guthrie Fire Department is asking you to take Blanchett with the options that they are required for their vehicle, makes them the low bid.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item 7 is open seal bid 2015 FD2 for a steel building addition in Twin Lakes Fire Department. Consideration of possible action.
Yeah.
Do you want to make, I want to make informal statement, but I can't. I'm always being recorded. Room cleared out.
Sure did. I don't see our cameraman. We're, oh,
He's over there.
oh, okay.
Let Mark
Oh,
read it out
and
loud.
this is for $42,600, and it is Ron Walters Construction. $42,600. This one is $95,122, and it is PC Steel Buildings.
That's a nice building there now.
That's a big difference.
Well, they all were last time, some of them were up to 120 for a $50,000 building. That makes sense sometimes. Let's look at these over here.
All right, we'll come back to item 7. Consideration of possible action on approving Millburger Raleigh invoices 42-156, 42-157, and 42-158 for bridge inspections.
I'm against it.
Yeah. You can just leave.
Go home. We did, we've got 3 separate invoices for each of the districts. 1, 2, 3.
I like that thick one's 30.
It is. I've got the summary of recommended repairs and the new bridge inspection report with photos. We can go over those after the meeting today if you'd like, if that works.
You want to assign the local government?
Yeah, individually, or if you guys can all stay together. There's 73 bridges that you have, so that's going to take a bit of time, but we'll try to get through those pretty quickly.
He's asked for stuff that we worked through.
Got marked here everywhere that you just yourselves need to sign, since these are separate invoices, just the individual commissioner in each district needs to sign their
This here, local government.
Yes.
So the basic layout of the invoice, of course, has total cost, which is paid by ODOT. And then each of you guys will have a few bridges that need to be load posted, and we'll go over those when I review the bridges that we inspected. So the invoice here lists the bridges that need to be posted, and of course, once those are posted, you can fax me back the sheet that's not signed right now, that it's been posted. I'll forward that on to ODOT.
Fair enough.
Let them finish this item and then ask them to bring it back.
Well, these are triplets.
Yes, one will be for you guys. This is for you.
All three of us.
He didn't want it, maybe he didn't.
Did you bring Carl a copy of these?
Yes, this will be your copy. You can keep that if you want.
So we have that.
You want an extra copy?
Oh, no.
I can give you.
Would you
another
like to, take these and regurgitate?
I'm just gonna have to talk to Judge about his health.
Yeah, you should.
I'm gonna have to have a set of copies, so I make
That one
copies.
says do not pay offer.
And then get you a set. These go back to ODOT for payment.
I think those can stay here.
Yes, this one, the stamped one stays here.
And I think they're already signed.
You'll have to sign that one, that's just help with all three of them.
They come back
Oh,
through the meeting.
said we fixed it. Pictures.
That's it. Okay, I'll bring you an extra copy next time.
I'll make a
1, 2,
motion that we
3.
approve
I'll make
the
copies and
invoices,
get back.
item number 8.
Second.
All in favor?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Come back to number 7. You ready, man?
Number, come back to number 7.
The, we might accept the lowest bid on that.
That's the one you
The
want?
other one wants $32,000 up front, but in there you can't get anywhere.
I'll make the motion.
You guys have enough money in your,
Yes, Ron Walters.
Yeah.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
42,600.
Thanks, sir.
Yep. Item number 9, consideration possible action on approving resolution and related documents authorizing approval of lease purchase agreement with RCB Bank for 2015 Mack Granite truck for District Number 2. Can't get road rock when you get a truck made out of rock.
They'll look like rock coming down the road.
Press that truck,
Ford signs this first one that's flagged. Mike, you'll sign the others. And Lowell did approve all of that. Who's second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
there.
Yeah.
That one doesn't say, let's see.
Is it right there, you're fine.
Okay.
Pretty quiet.
All right. Okay. Item number 10 is consideration of possible action on approving resolution accepting $354.56 donation from Lewis Beckman. How do you say that? Beckman? It's just Beckman? For District 3, for a purchase of the culvert to be placed on Rockwell between County Road 71 and 72. Second.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Item 11, consideration of possible action on approving resolution of $1,430 donation from Arthur Bridle to District Number 1 for purchase of road rock to be placed on council road. All in favor?
Second.
Aye. Item number 12 is consideration of possible action on the resolution appointing receiving officers for various accounts.
So moved.
Second.
There is none on 13.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 14 is the consent agenda.
Transfer.
Now, Charlie, a lot of times this is where we say, while we're just sitting up here practicing signing our name, if people would like to speak, they can. So you're welcome, or you can wait.
I'll go ahead and help you with your time while you're signing the signatures in. Probably don't have a lot to say since we had some comments from the public during the meeting earlier. But I do appreciate the high standard that it appears that you're setting here in understanding TIF districts. And that is, they're properly used when they provide infrastructure up to a person's property. But once you go on that property, you cross that line either to that which is wrong and immoral, or and it just is not a workable thing. Just a few comments. We heard the comment that this area is growing fast and it's medically underserved. I thought that was a little humorous when you have 3 hospitals within 6 miles of that particular place, point 1, point 2. If you're truly underserved, then there's actually a market for it. And if there's a market for something, they can do that on their own nickel. They don't need government subsidies to do that. Another thing that was said is probably a big mistake in not going this way. This county, particularly the south part's been developing very rapidly without any government help. There are businesses all up and down Waterloo Road, and every one of those have put their business in, and their own water, their own sewer, their own driveways at their own expense. There's developments all over South Logan County, and they put that in at their own expense. And I believe that if you ever get started down this road of providing services on an entity's property, then there'll be no end to it. Every developer comes along will want you to put the roads, the water, sewer, other utilities in. So I just thank you. TIFs, I support TIF District 1. They can be good if you use them right, if they're done right, but you need to always know where that high standard is. It's not to allow those tax dollars It's even more egregious in this case when it would likely put your hospital out of business that's here. And another thing too, if you realize, why would Edmond be against this when all this 83–85% of this property tax would go to the Edmond schools? That's prime property. They won't get any of it for 25 years. But whoever owns that property can turn around tomorrow and start developing it. Prime property along Waterloo. And without a TIF district, they'll be getting money immediately at that point in time. So there are lots of ins and outs to consider on this. I just, again, thank you for the high standard on that you're setting.
I talked to Cambridge, who holds the note on that mortgage healthcare system. Talked to the land acquisition person for them, who knew all about this. He seemed to think that the real problem with any development there is the sewer system. And, but they said they're ready to wait however long it takes for us to get that infrastructure down there to them. And then they would start talking about the development of that.
We
But
don't
in the
have the
meantime,
power to-
that land will probably stay fallow. In actuality, the income we receive from that is $115 per year. And we'll continue with that, I assume, until such time as they feel like they can make that a viable project.
Blanket purchase orders.
But that's not this board's responsibility
It
for
is
sewer.
not.
That's the.
With it as they choose.
So Charlie, I hear this little lunch project, you think that's a proper function of the TIF?
Yeah, I do. I'll give you another great example, and just consideration for other things. I was discussing this with someone the other day. Let's take Charter Oak and Douglas, which is in your district, Mike.
Yes.
Running a half mile east of Douglas on Charter Oak is a paved road going over to an addition that's on the north side of Charter Oak Road. There's also one on the south side, but on the north side. When that addition went in, and it's probably got, I don't know, a couple of hundred homes in it, it's probably not done yet. But when that addition went in, the county and the developers split the cost and put a half mile paved road in. Had a TIF district been done there, and that road would have gone in, the property tax from those homes would have paid for that, the county wouldn't have had to be out half the cost. The developer wouldn't have had to be out half the cost, which means he either has a higher profit or he can sell his lots for less. And the county gets a half mile road paved, and they don't have to spend any money to do it because the TIF would reimburse that. That is a good and a proper use of TIF. The citizens benefit because they have another half mile of road paved. And so TIFs can be structured properly. What's going on over here to take that sewer over across I-35, as long as that stays on easement on public property, that's running water, sewer, and roads, street lights, whatever. Those are all proper functions of government. That's infrastructure proper. And so how are you going to do it? How are you going to come up with the money for it? Well, a TIF is a way that you can come up with that, and the newly created property tax will pay for that, and the citizens don't have to come up with a sales tax increase or some other increase. There's a couple other things about this while we're talking here. I believe it's a very risky development down here. Number one, I would never go into it without a bond to assure if this hospital fails, or if it gets to the place they have to sell it to a nonprofit, and if it becomes a nonprofit, it's not going to generate tax at that point in time.
Exactly.
So I would demand a bond that if that fails, that bond will pay off this indebtedness, point one. And point two, unless you have it in absolute stone that there's going to be an ambulatory emergency center there, and the doctors the other night said there would be one there, but I'd want it in stone because, to be honest with you, That's probably what will make that operation work in the red down there as opposed to being profitable. Doctor-owned hospitals know if they can do away with an ambulatory emergency room and just do surgeries and imaging, that's where the profit is in medical care, and they can do quite well. But when you have to take in everybody that walks in that door into your emergency room, and many of them are going to be on a self-pay basis, and a self-pay basis means about 80% of the time, no pay. They don't pay. Then all of a sudden, doctors that are very concerned about delivering great health care, and they own it, all of a sudden become concerned with the bottom line. And it's just going to be really hard for that to be profitable down there if it is a for-profit hospital paying property taxes and paying income tax if it's profitable. And so I just think there's a lot of very high risk here in this deal, even if you didn't have that high standard of putting infrastructure on somebody's property.
If it was a great deal, they would already be breaking ground.
We don't have a county planning commission. They don't need anybody's
honest-
permission to do that.
To be honest, they should have been breaking ground several years ago. And the reason why they are not is, again, because of their management. And we know who that is.
I'm not saying we're there.
I'm not either. But
Sometimes in those projects, you
apparently-
scale back, you build your convenience store first.
Exactly, true.
Something to generate some revenue for you.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to consent agenda item.
Let me, just so we're clear, okay, transfer appropriations, transfer fiscal year 13, 14, 14, 15 cash funds for various accounts. There were no except checks due and owing, that's what I needed to be clear before. So, that concludes the consent agenda.
I still second his motion. And I'll vote aye. You finished? You wanna keep going?
No, I'm done.
Anyone else like to speak?
Charlie's right, this area is not underserved in the medical industry. 95% of our ambulance transports from the south part of the county go to OU Edmond or Integris Edmond.
Mhm.
The Mercy facility is not a hospital, it does not have an ER.
That's right.
So there's two, and neither one of them are busy. So from that standpoint, we're not, if we were underserved, they'd be packed all the time and be sending us elsewhere, and they're not.
Yeah, I think what they were looking at is a lot of surgeons who are upset, don't care for working for Mercy or for Integris. They want their own hospital. And so they've signed on to this thinking that they would have their own surgery centers there and be able to do surgery. So that's critical care is what that is.
Just like Charlie said, that's where the money's at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
That is where the money is.
I could say something else, I talked to two of the doctors after the meeting the other night down south, down at the Nazarene Church
Yeah.
afterwards, and I'm not impugning them at all. Their desire is to deliver high-quality health care in a new environment. Mom care is enforcing a new environment. I asked them if they knew Dr. Keith Smith at the Oklahoma City Surgery Center, and they said, yes, this is what we're trying to do. Okay? Now, Dr. Smith, when he and his partner, Dr. Lantier, opened the surgery center of Oklahoma City, they never asked government for one penny.
Yeah.
And I know Dr. Smith well enough to know he would never, under any circumstances, ask for a penny of government subsidy. That's totally against his grain.
May I ask on that?
Sure.
So they built all the infrastructure on the county easement as well?
Well, it's alongside Broadway Extension.
So they already had it in place?
It doesn't matter.
Didn't have to
It
build that
doesn't matter
infrastructure.
whether it's in place or if it's gonna be brought to them, as long as it's on public property, that's fine. I'm just saying,
Right.
and it's like, what?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Vance talked about, the issue in Norman with the hotel down there.
Sure.
That's very much on developer property where that goes. And I know people do it, but there's a moral factor here.
Absolutely.
Is it morally right to do? Is it morally right to help that hotel who's competing with other hotels that didn't have that advantage? And I could go on and on with these kinds of examples. Right now, Oklahoma City's looking at building a convention hotel. And Meg Salyer said it could be all the way from on their own nickel to the city will own it. When the city owns a business, what do you call that? That's socialism.
That is a problem.
Well, all you have to do is go to the Reed Center. The city of Midwest City owns that. They own the hotel that adjoins it. They own a restaurant in it. And they're competing with others in the private sector. And when you're government competing against people in the private sector,
That's wrong.
well, it's not only wrong, you don't have to be good. You can just raise taxes from your competitors and subsidize your entity even more.
Sure.
And so, anyway, there's a moral factor here too, and it's even more important when you consider possibly closing the hospital here. in
Yeah,
Guthrie.
absolutely.
And and who
Well, I
knows
was not aware of that.
who knows what would happen with the clinics? I think you'd see the clinic at the hospital close,
Mhm.
the clinic in Crescent. That's up to Mercy whether they would keep that open. If they think that they can get their patients, the real reason for a clinic, if you want to know the truth, you hope they break even. Most of them operate in the red. The two purposes of a clinic are to provide less than hospital expense care for your public citizens, and when they have to go to a hospital, you want to direct them to your hospital. Because that's just the purpose of a clinic. So all of a sudden, why would Mercy, if they can't get their patients out of there to go to Mercy on Memorial Road, why would they even keep that clinic open in Crescent? I don't know. These are all things to consider. There's a lot of potential unintended consequences for doing something like
They
this.
probably didn't mention none of that down there at their little meeting.
No, they didn't mention a thing. I had to bring up most of those things and so.
Look, we appreciate your statements you've made.
Absolutely.
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
So which truck did you take the $66,000 on?
Charlie Meadows.
Yeah.
Roy, nice to meet you. Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate it.
Ford. You need to get on the list. On the OPEC list.
I got my three,
I'll be
give them to me,
doing-
and I'll be gone.
Same, another brush truck.
Oh, another truck right now. Let's go over something real quick.
If you.
Well, see, they didn't say that the other day at the meeting, when they take a test.
Well, it's because the bid actually said Crescent.